Teapot Dome Scandal. How many of you guys remember Teapot Dome?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. When you were in 6th grade, probably, you heard about it and didn't remember it.
Church school.
Plain language, what it was is out by Teapot, I think it was Teapot, Wyoming, maybe Montana, I can't remember, it doesn't matter. Out in the west, there were some acres. The U.S. sold oil rights to a company. Oil company, obviously, right? And the guy in charge accepted a bribe to do that. Okay? Big scandal. The funny thing is that this scandal is 1922, carries over to 1923. The president under this scandal was a guy named Harding. Remember anything about Harding? I mentioned him. Went up to Alaska, ate bad fish, came back and died. That is some gross oversimplification. You will not find anything like that. We don't know if he ate bad fish. He did go up to Alaska and he did come back dead. But what happened in between, we're not sure. Okay? So he dies in the midst of this scandal. So who takes over? Calvin Coolidge. A guy named Silent Cal by the press because he never wanted to speak more than he had to. He's the one I told you that was elected in 24 and could have easily won election in 1928. And he said, 10 years is too long for anyone to be president. He comes into this scandal, and the first thing he does is clean house. What was the problem with this scandal? There was too much money in the federal government. We were spending it without oversight. This guy was selling the overrides because we have millions going through, so why not have a couple of 100,000 coming back to him? It's a scandal. And Coolidge's solution is to restrict federal spending. This is not a new solution. It's the idea that for Coolidge, reform equals restraint. First thing we do is the money that comes in are taxes, right? It goes to the federal government. So the federal government has to be extra responsible with it because it's not their money, right? It's a crazy idea. It's not our money, it's your money. So the very first thing he does is he lowers taxes. What happens to the revenue coming into the United States? It increases. Why?
Taxes are lower.
When taxes are lower, the cost of doing businesses is lower. And if the cost of doing business is lower, what's going to happen to your profits? It's going to go up. And oddly enough, you got more profits, what's going to happen to the tax revenue coming in? It's going to go up. It's weird. We don't understand it, but that's exactly what happens. It's not that weird. It makes sense to economists. But at the time, for him, it wasn't a theory. It was the fact that it's about restraint. It's not your money. He did a number of things. It's very important. I just want to show two of them. One of them was this idea in 1925 where people said, you know what? The federal government's got all this money, right? Why doesn't the federal government build a bunch of dams right along the Tennessee Valley? And we could get cheap electricity to all the people that live out there. And what was Coolidge's answer to that?
No.
The federal government should not be responsible for that. Who should be responsible for that? The states, local people, have private companies do that. If the federal government gets on it, then we have a monopoly on electricity. The federal government has a monopoly. Do we like monopolies? No, nobody likes monopolies, not even the federal government. So he resisted that. The other thing they had was, remember I told you that the farmers were having a tough time because of the debts. So one of the solutions somebody said is, how about this? The federal government just start buying up all the extra food. That will keep the prices higher because the federal government will be buying up the food. What would happen if Rockefeller comes around and starts buying up all the other cheap stations that can't compete with them? What do we call that?
A monopoly.
A monopoly. And what did Calvin Coolidge say? We can't do that. That would be manipulating the prices to make it higher. We can't do that. Now, I mentioned these two particular laws, and I don't know if you guys know. Why do you think I mentioned these two particular laws?
Don't they eventually happen?
Both of them. Under FDR, it's one of the first things that they passed, 33 and 34, as a result of the Great Depression. Coolidge would have nothing to do with it. But of course, what was the economy like under Coolidge? Booming, right? Now, it's important to understand this, because this really does define Coolidge. And so we go back. What is the definition of reform under Coolidge?
Restraint.
Restraint. Does this reflect any progressivism?
Yes and no.
Go ahead and give me both.
Yes, because we're still making things, or we're still making. Wow. It shows reform because we're still changing. We're still doing new things, but we're still wanting to keep our ways. Is what I mean by that. And but also at the same time have some restraint on us. We're not overdoing it.
Okay, let's remember, what is the definition of progressivism? You have to do this. When you do your essay, you have to define this. Otherwise, it won't make any sense. What's a really good definition of progressivism? Or a progressive? Someone who has faith in progress, which means they really believe it can be changed. Remember we talked about the muckrakers? The muckrakers are journalists that go around exposing corruption. You'd think that they would be the pessimistic guys that there is. But they're all the definition of progressivism. Why? Why are they exposing the crime? The corruption. Because if it's exposed, what do they really have belief in? Faith in the American people to do what? To change, to boot the corrupt guys out and put clean ones in. They really represent faith and progress. Similarly, the reform is based on a genuine belief that if we do these things, we'll fix it. Coolidge, one of the concepts of restraint is I don't have to fix it. The federal government doesn't have to. Because what will happen? People will rise up and they'll do the right thing. That's an amazing faith in progress.